Good morning, spiritual companions. We are reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, continuing chapter 5, The Master and Vijay Goswami, on page 226. Vijay asks, "Sir, why are we bound like this? Why don't we see God?" Master, Maya is nothing but the egotism of the embodied soul. This egotism has covered everything like a veil. All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. If, by God's grace, a man but once realizes that he is not the doer, then he at once becomes a jivanmukta. Though living in the body, he is liberated. He has nothing else to fear. This Maya, that is to say, the ego, is like a cloud. The sun cannot be seen on account of a thin patch of cloud. When that disappears, one sees the sun. If by the Guru's grace one's ego vanishes, then one sees God. The jiva is nothing but the embodiment of Satchidananda. But since Maya, or ego, has created various upadhis, he has forgotten his real self. Each upadhi changes man's nature. If even a sickly man puts on high boots, he begins to whistle and climbs the stairs like an Englishman, jumping from one step to another. If a man but holds a pen in his hand, he scribbles on any paper he can get hold of. Such is the power of the pen. Money is also a great upadhi. The possession of money makes such a difference in man. He is no longer the same person. A Brahmin used to frequent our temple garden. Outwardly he was very modest. One day I went to Konagar with Hriday. No sooner had we got off the boat than we noticed the Brahmin seated on the bank of the Ganges. We thought he had been enjoying the fresh air. Looking at us, he said, "Hello there, priest, how do you do?" I marked his tone and said to Hriday, "The man must have got some money. That's why he talks that way." Hriday laughed. A man can get rid of the ego after the attainment of knowledge. On attaining knowledge, he goes into samadhi, and the ego disappears. But it is very difficult to obtain such knowledge. The eye that makes one a worldly person and attaches one to woman and gold is the wicked eye. The intervention of this ego creates the difference between jiva and atman. Water appears to be divided into two parts if one puts a stick across it. But in reality, there is only one expanse of water. It appears as two on account of the stick. This I is the stick. Remove the stick and there remains only one expanse of water as before. Now, what is this wicked I? It is the ego that says, "What? Don't they know me? I have so much money. Who is wealthier than I?" If a thief robs such a man of only 10 rupees, first of all, he wrings the money out of the thief, then he gives him a good beating. But the matter doesn't end there. The thief is handed over to the police and is eventually sent to jail. The wicked eye says, "What? Doesn't the rogue know whom he has robbed? To steal my 10 rupees? How dare he?" Vijay, if without destroying the I, a man cannot get rid of attachment to the world, and consequently cannot experience samadhi, then it would be wise for him to follow the path of Brahmanyana to attain samadhi. If the I persists in the path of devotion, then one should rather choose the path of knowledge. Master, it is true that one or two can get rid of the I through samadhi, but these cases are very rare. You may indulge in thousands of reasonings, but still the I comes back. You may cut the peepal tree to the very root today, but you will notice a sprout springing up tomorrow. Therefore, if the I must remain, let the rascal remain as the servant I. As long as you live, you should say, O God, thou art the master, and I am thy servant. The I that feels, I am the servant of God, I am his devotee, does not injure one. Vijay to the master, Sir, you ask us to renounce the wicked I. Is there any harm in the servant I? Master, the servant I, that is, the feeling, I am the servant of God, I am the devotee of God, does not injure one. On the contrary, it helps one realize God. Vijay, well, sir, what becomes of the lust, anger, and other passions of one who keeps the servant I? Master, if a man truly feels like that, then he has only the semblance of lust, anger, and the like. If after attaining God, he looks on himself as the servant or the devotee of God, then he cannot injure anyone. By touching the philosopher's stone, a sword is turned into gold. It keeps the appearance of a sword, but cannot injure. When the dry branch of a coconut palm drops to the ground, it leaves only a mark on the trunk, indicating that once there was a branch at that place. In like manner, he who has attained God keeps only an appearance of ego. There remains in him only a semblance of anger and lust. He becomes like a child. A child has no attachment to the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. He becomes as quickly detached from a thing as he becomes attached to it. You can cajole him out of a cloth worth 5 rupees with a doll worth an anna, though at first he may say with great determination, "No, I won't give it to you. My daddy bought it for me." Again, all persons are the same to a child. He has no feeling of high and low in regard to persons, so he doesn't discriminate about caste. The child doesn't know hate or what is holy or unholy. Even after attaining samadhi, some retain the servant ego or the devotee ego. The bhakta keeps this I consciousness. He says, O God, thou art the master, and I am the servant. Thou art the Lord, and I am thy devotee. He feels that way even after the realization of God. His I is not completely effaced. Again, by constantly practicing this kind of I consciousness, one ultimately attains God. This is called bhakti yoga. One can attain the knowledge of Brahman too, by following the path of bhakti. God is all-powerful. He may give his devotee Brahmayana also, if he so wills. But the devotee generally doesn't seek the knowledge of the Absolute. He would rather have the consciousness that God is the master and he the servant, or that God is the Divine Mother and he the child. Vijay. But those who discriminate according to the Vedanta philosophy also realize him in the end, don't they? Master. Yes, one may reach him by following the path of discrimination too. That is called jnana yoga, but it is an extremely difficult path. If a man acquires the firm knowledge that Brahman alone is real and the world illusory, then his mind merges in samadhi. But, as I told you, in the Kali Yuga, the life of a man depends entirely on food. How can he have the consciousness that Brahman alone is real and the world illusory? In the Kali Yuga, it is difficult to have the feeling, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the 24 cosmic principles, I am beyond pleasure and pain, I am above disease and grief, old age and death. However you may reason and argue, the feeling that the body is identical with the soul will somehow crop up from an unexpected quarter. One cannot get rid of this identification with the body. Therefore, the path of bhakti is the best for the people of the Kali Yuga. It is an easy path. And there is the saying, I don't want to become sugar, I want to eat it. I never feel like saying, I am Brahman. I say, Thou art my Lord, and I am thy servant. My desire is to sing God's name and glories. It is very good to look on God as the master and on oneself as his servant. Further, you see, people speak of the waves as belonging to the Ganges, but no one says that the Ganges belongs to the waves. The feeling, I am he, is not wholesome. A man who entertains such an idea, while looking on his body as the self, causes himself great harm. He cannot go forward in spiritual life. He drags himself down. He deceives himself as well as others. He cannot understand his own state of mind. But it isn't any and every kind of bhakti that enables one to realize God. One cannot realize God without prema bhakti. Another name for prema bhakti is raja bhakti. Footnote, supreme love, which makes one attached only to God. God cannot be realized without love and longing. Unless one has learnt to love God, one cannot realize him. There is another kind of bhakti, known as Vaihidi bhakti, according to which one must repeat God's name a fixed number of times, fast, make pilgrimages laid down in the scriptures, worship God with prescribed offerings, make a number of sacrifices, and so forth and so on. By continuing such practices a long time, one gradually acquires raga bhakti. God cannot be realized until one has raga bhakti. One must love God. In order to realize God, one must be completely free from worldliness and direct all of one's mind to him. But some acquire the raga bhakti directly. It is innate in them. They have it from their very childhood. Even at an early age, they weep for God. Vaidhi bhakti is like moving a fan to make a breeze. One needs the fan to make the breeze. Similarly, one practices japa, austerity, and fasting in order to acquire love of God, who indeed will perform the ceremonies enjoined in the scriptures when mad with the love of God. Devotion to God may be said to be green so long as it doesn't grow into love of God, but it becomes ripe when it has grown into such love. A man with green bhakti cannot assimilate spiritual talk and instruction, but one with ripe bhakti can. The image that falls on a photographic plate covered with black film, silver nitrate, is retained. On the other hand, thousands of images may be reflected on a bare piece of glass, but not one of them is retained. As the object moves away, The glass becomes the same as it was before. One cannot assimilate spiritual instruction unless one has already developed love of God. Vijay. Is bhakti alone sufficient for the attainment of God, for His vision? Master, yes. One can see God through bhakti alone, but it must be ripe bhakti, prema bhakti, and raga bhakti. When one has that bhakti, one loves God even as the mother loves the child the mother, or the wife the husband. When one has such love for God, one does not feel any physical attraction to wife, children, relatives, and friends. One retains only compassion for them. To such a man, the world appears as a foreign land, a place where he has merely to perform his duties. It is like a man having his real home in the country, but coming to Calcutta for work. He has to rent a house in Calcutta for the sake of his duties. When one develops love of God, one completely gets rid of one's attachment to the world and worldly wisdom. A man cannot see God if he has even the slightest trace of worldliness. Matchsticks, if damp, won't strike fire, though you rub 1,000 of them against the matchbox. You only waste a heap of sticks. The mind soaked in worldliness is like a damp matchstick. If the devotee but once feels this attachment, this ecstatic love for God, this mature devotion and longing, then he sees God in both his aspects, with form and without form. Vijay, how can one see God? Master, one cannot see God without purity of heart. Through attachment to woman and gold, the mind has become stained, covered with dirt, as it were. A magnet cannot attract a needle if the needle is covered with mud. Wash away the mud, and the magnet will draw it. Likewise, the dirt of the mind can be washed away with the tears of our eyes. This stain is removed if one sheds tears of repentance and says, "O God, I shall never again do a wicked thing." Thereupon God, who is like the magnet, draws to himself the mind, which is like the needle. Then the devotee goes into samadhi and obtains the vision of God. You may try it thousands of times, but nothing can be achieved without God's grace. One cannot see God without His grace. Is it an easy thing to receive grace? One must altogether renounce egotism. One cannot see God without His grace. Is it an easy thing to receive grace? One must altogether renounce egotism. One cannot see God as long as one feels, "I am the doer." God does not easily appear in the heart of a man who feels himself to be his own master. But God can be seen the moment His grace descends. He is the Sun of knowledge. One single ray of His has illumined the world with the light of knowledge. That is how we are able to see one another and acquire varied knowledge. One can see God only if he turns his light toward his own face. The police sergeant goes his rounds in the dark of night with a lantern in his hand. No one sees his face, but with the help of that light, the sergeant sees everybody's face, and others, too, can see one another. If you want to see the sergeant, however, you must pray to him. "Sir, please turn the light on your own face. Let me see you." In the same way, one must pray to God. O Lord, be gracious and turn the light of knowledge on Thyself, that I may see Thy face. A house without light indicates poverty. So one must light the lamp of knowledge in one's heart. Vijay had brought medicine with him. The master asked a devotee to give him some water. He was indeed a fountain of compassion. He had arranged for Vijay's boat fare, since the latter was too poor to pay it. Vijay, Balaram, M., and the other devotees left for Calcutta in a country boat. End of that day, end of today's reading.